Okay, so today's CCP lesson is over the book Losers by Michael Lewis. Their assignment was to read the book, originally called Trail Fever by the author. Please take notes about where these candidates are from, who they are as leaders, why they want to run for the presidency, and how the author views them as people and as a candidate. So we're going to review some of these candidates today to make sure that everybody is on the same page about who they are and why, more importantly, why they run for the presidency. So this is kind of ushering them from APUS, CCPUS into AP or CCP government for next year. And so the book Losers is about the 1996 election. So, folks, in 1996, who's president of the United States? Bill Clinton, right? Bill Clinton is the sitting president of the United States. Now, you are all way too young to really remember Bill Clinton as president at all because you guys weren't born until Bush was president, okay? So this is somewhat of a historical exercise because you really didn't know the Clinton years. Did any of you talk to your parents about this at all? Because they lived through this election. None of you looked at your parents and said, hey, do you remember any of these people?
Yes, but my father said all these people were idiots. They never had a chance.
All these people were idiots. They never. That's kind of the text of the book right there, too. I mean, Lewis is kind of saying the same thing. All right. So if you get a chance over the next couple of days, maybe ask your parents about this one, because this would have been roughly around when your parents were old enough to really care about politics. Some of them may have even voted in this presidential election. So they may remember voting either for Clinton or who ends up being the nominee for the Republicans. Dole, right? Okay. And in the book, they make it pretty clear that Dole's the front runner from the start. Okay, that he's kind of the odds-on choice. So if you remember, we talked about this at the very beginning before you read it, that this is a book not about Dole, and you notice there wasn't much about him. This was the author wondering why the other guys were even bothering. You know, if you already know Dole's going to be the presidential candidate, why are you here? Okay, and before we get started, who out of the people that were running, who is your most intriguing person? Who'd you find the most intriguing or odd or just, man, I hope they talk more about this person?
Keys.
Why Keys?
I don't know. He's kind of like super religious politician guy.
Super religious politician
And
guy.
even like hunger strikes to like be able to debate and stuff.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so you picked up on the fact that he was willing to go to the mat and not eat so that he could debate. And why wasn't he allowed to debate? Does anybody remember?
He screamed too much, right? So he got kicked out.
He didn't necessarily get kicked out. This has become a major conflict in presidential politics, is that during the nomination process, you have to get a certain percentage of polling to qualify as a candidate to get on the stage. So some debates will say if you don't have, let's say, 5% support within the party, we're not inviting you on the stage. So what's the argument of the people who are under 5%? How am I supposed to get more if you don't let me at least get on television and talk to people? You know, how do I get more support if I don't at least get to say my views? The argument for the people above that percent would be, hey, wait a minute, you know, I've earned the trust of a certain amount of people, and now it's my job to get out my voice without some crazy.
Pardon the interruption. Can we have Liam take this to the main office?
He's on his way.
Thanks.
So, you know, is it fair to have somebody who is maybe taking airtime away from somebody, in this case like Bob Dole, who's trying to appeal to the Republican Party? Because during the Republican primary, Republicans are the ones tuning into this debate. So if he's trying to secure his base, he doesn't need somebody who's got nothing to lose saying things that might put him in an awkward light. Again, the other argument would be maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that makes your candidate better, more sharp if they're being attacked by some fringe candidate. Okay. What are the other characters you found interesting?
Harry.
Why?
Because he created his own party, the Reform Party, and he had like 8% vote or something like that.
So you're talking about Perot?
Yeah, right. Whatever.
Atros Perot. Okay. And look, you guys have to understand, this is why you probably should talk to your parents or even your grandparents about this election, because this election was so weird. 92 was as well. When Clinton was first elected, Clinton didn't get 50% of the vote. Okay, he never secured 50% of the popular vote. As we've learned this year, though, does it matter? Because who elects the president? The Electoral College, right? Okay, so that doesn't really matter, but it's still a little rough that you have a president coming into office that not 50% of the population wanted. So, can you really start off, and this is a key term you're going to talk about next year, a term known as a mandate. Does anybody know what a mandate is? You're what? Chicago, I need you to speak up. I'm sorry. That's not, I mean, to a certain extent, you're on the right track. Okay. In this instance, we're talking about the power of a candidate coming into office. Okay. A mandate of the masses, meaning people who voted said, this is the person we want. Overwhelmingly, this is who we want. Okay. So in your lifetime, you've seen a lot of close elections. Okay. 16 was close, 20 was close. The election that in your lifetime that wasn't really all that close, at least on paper, would be the Obama-McCain back in 2008. Obama won fairly comfortably. So when he came into office, people were just assuming, well, we're probably going to pass the Affordable Care Act. Why? That's what he ran on. So he had the mandate from the masses, hey, we voted for this candidate. Can the candidate then walk in and say, hey, they voted for me because they want this? This is what I've been talking about the most. So therefore, this is why we're going to pass it. Okay. Trump's major issue back in 2016. Everybody remember what his major push was? He didn't really talk about abortion in 2016.
Yeah, wasn't it the wall?
The wall. Build the wall. Now, did he win by a ton? He squeaked through in the Electoral College, and he didn't win the popular vote. So were there people saying, yeah, you may have won, but you didn't win by all that much? And maybe the wall became contentious. Did he end up building the wall? No, it wasn't like it sailed through Congress. It's not like Congress sat there and said, well, the people voted you in this massive, wave of support. So is he going to get what he wants? No. And is Biden finding out that his mandate wasn't really all that decisive either? He came in saying, here's what I want to do. And what has Congress been doing with it ever since? Stall, stall, stall. No, no, no. So having a major win in a presidential election goes a long way to helping you secure what you want to do. Okay. Clinton didn't really have that in 92, but he's looking to have it in 96, because if he gets reelected with a massive amount of support, is he then going to be able to look at Congress and say, you're going to do what I want you to do now? Okay. Because they want me here. You got to do my agenda now. So this is Clinton's big show. Like, if he can win by a massive windfall of votes, he's got a lot of power. Okay. So what is Dole's job? To try and take away as much of that power as he possibly can. If he can't win, make it as close as you possibly can, so that Congress can at least say, well, we're not going to do everything you want to do. Okay. Now, where does Perot come into that? In 1992, he was kind of the spoiler. He took votes away from George H.W. Bush, Daddy Bush, okay, Bush 41, whatever you want to call him, okay. He took enough votes away to where Clinton could win a certain amount of states and then become president of the United States. Perot tries to become a spoiler again in 96. And who doesn't want him there? The Republicans, again, they don't want him there because he's going to whittle away some of their support and possibly allow Clinton to win more states. Again, strengthening his hold on the White House, which is not what they want. Okay. Other candidates you found intriguing. Will? Why Buchanan? He's not really interested in power? How so? Well, what did you find intriguing about that? I guess would be a better question. He's kind of an outsider, right? Buchanan, and to give you an idea, Buchanan worked for Richard Nixon. Okay, he's been a political operative most, if not all, of his life. Okay, and he says some things that are very extreme. All right, he's one of the first people. He may not be the first, but he's one of the first people to say, "I want a wall on the Mexican border." So think of Buchanan as Trump before Trump. Buchanan, of course, though, goes even more out there with some of his viewpoints with that. I mean, he's pretty archaic with that. He at one point he wanted guard towers, which was either misinterpreted or correctly. We don't know. Guard towers means what? Somebody comes up and tries to jump over the wall. Theoretically, we could shoot at him. Now he's proposing that at a time period where the Berlin Wall is still in effect in Berlin, where people are getting shot for trying to go over the wall. So not exactly great optics, okay? But he's a controversial figure. He always has been. So too is Keyes. So too is Perot. These guys are all controversial. So you guys are all finding the controversial people somewhat interesting. Anybody else that you kind of, Steve?
Alexander, because he said like he was one of the only Republicans who could beat Clinton, or who was like, like worthy of beating Clinton, and he says that, but yet he gets very awkward or very like kind of scared and shuts down when he's cornered, or has to say something he doesn't want the people to hear, or doesn't want to say, and also because he handed out like supporters or friends or something, like church, like they seem going to go to this church, but one day he like stood up God and went to a talk show or went to a show to discuss something. Also, his like strategies of talking usually his wife to kind of like get the crowd ready, and like that, like how he kind of copied other president styles too, with that whole like wife.
The dynamic of using her as kind of a warm-up act almost. Yeah. So he's trying to be presidential. Did it work out for him?
I mean, kind of, but he had a forgettable campaign.
He had a forgettable campaign, right?
Yeah.
And anybody catch what Michael Lewis, the author, made fun of Lamar Alexander for? Had to do with his airplane.
Oh yeah, he does everything with exclamation points.
Exclamation points, right?
Yeah.
Lamar! Painted on the outside of his jet.
Yeah. Also, that his campaign is for everything except for what it's against. Right. So like, if it's against like something specific, they're gonna hate on that. But if it's something that he doesn't really care about, or something he hasn't really focused on, he doesn't really care about it, he'll be for it, and then he'll be for the other thing or against the other thing. Like,
Which opens him up to a ton of criticism, right? Because it's hard to gauge where he stands on things. So he has, and look, is it fair to say that Lamar is a lot like if you read it here and really kind of paid attention, you probably felt a little sad for Lamar because he mirrors a lot of Americans. Many of you have 2 or 3 issues you're really passionate about. But if I was really go into other issues, if I was to say, where do you stand on abortion? A very hot button issue, especially today. Is it fair to say a few of you would have fairly strong viewpoints, either pro-choice, pro-life, and then a smattering of you would be like, I really don't care all that much. It doesn't affect me, so, eh. And then, well, what about capital punishment, the death penalty? Maybe 2 or 3 of you would be like, I'm for it or I'm opposed, and then I don't really care. Lamar kind of mirrors a lot of Americans in that way, where he's got about 2 or 3 issues he's really passionate about. And the rest of them, I don't really care until it matters. Which, as an American, that's fine. If I say, how do you feel about this? And you say, I really don't care. Well, that's your prerogative. That's fine. But if I say that to a presidential candidate, they're expected to have a view, correct? They're expected to have a platform. This is where I stand. He seems to be, like you said, very passive about that. Okay? Not really matching the Lamar, Which, anybody know what recent presidential candidate tried to do the exact same thing and failed just as gloriously? Happened back in 2016. He lost to Trump in the primary.
I'm thinking of his name. It's not popping
give you a hint. He's a member of a political royal family, meaning maybe his father and brother both were in the White House. Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush, who was the governor of Florida, his little campaign placards and bumper stickers and everything were just Jeb! Exclamation point. And people said the same thing about him. He's got about 2 or 3 issues that, man, he's really passionate about, and after that, he really didn't care. And he doesn't really take firm stances on anything. And he was so busy being the anti-Trump that he lost. Everybody's like, well, we know where Trump is. Where do you stand? Wherever he doesn't. And that wasn't good enough. Which, did you get the feeling that Lamar was very similar? I'm the anti-Bob Dole. Well, great. What does that mean? Okay, so again, some of these candidates a little different. You know, you didn't really get a chance to meet Bob Dole all that much because he really didn't spend any time with him. Talked about Lamar. B1 Bob Dornan. My favorite story from the book is the airport. What happened to Bob Dornan at the airport?
He tried to tell these girls that he was running for president. Oh yeah. Try to I guess I don't know, make him look cool or whatever. And then he kind of just fails at doing it awkwardly.
Yes.
So the author walks up and helps explain to them what he is, what he's doing, whatever.
It's got to be embarrassing. You're running for president, and a journalist has to walk up and introduce you to the lady at the front counter and say, no, seriously, he is running for president. So he can get on a flight and go to the next debate. Okay, but it also shows an issue in politics as well. The other candidates are all not standing there getting on that flight. What are they doing? They have private planes. They have jets of their own. Okay, and this guy's flying commercial. So who's more like the typical American? Bob Dornan, and yet he has the least amount of support. So it brings up questions about our presidential politics. How is it these elitist guys are getting on airplanes of their own, literally with Lamar on the side of it, and Bob Dornan is sitting off to the side flying coach, And in this case, not even getting a flight. Steve Forbes. Good old Steve Forbes. He's the money man. It's amazing how none of you said that Steve Forbes was your favorite.
He's a spoiled kid.
He's a spoiled kid, all right. How so?
He got all his money and stuff from his parents, his dad's magazine and crap. He's like, oh, I can be the president. I propose flat tax, no different tax rate. It's no.
Fair enough. That's a fairly good synopsis of who he is. Yeah.
Familiar.
Lewis also say repeated the same things almost every single speech.
Yes. Repetition is key a lot of times in politics. To be fair, that's a stump speech. You guys know what a stump speech is? This is the speech that a presidential candidate gives when they get off a plane or they get off a train back in the day, or way back in the day when they would go town to town, they would jump up on a tree stump and give their speech. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I promised to do for you. That's why it's called a stump speech. You guys have heard the phrase, I'm getting on my soapbox now. This is the political equivalent of that. Okay. I'm going to stand up in a crowded town center and I'm going to tell you what's going on. So in presidential politics now, if Biden comes to town, which he is today, okay, and he's running for president, not as president, but he's running for the office. If Biden gets off of the flight, and let's say he goes to the museum center or he goes down to the Cincinnati Reds Stadium or whatever else, just to give an impromptu little rally, and he gets up and he speaks for 5 minutes, and he tells you everything he's going to do, and he gives you no specifics, and it's just a big rah-rah speech, that's a stump speech. Just riles you up. Are we tired of the taxes of the previous guy? Are you tired of the way the government's running? Well, let's put some pride back in the way we do things. Let's put the pride back in the United States of America. Let's bring the pride back. That's a stump speech. Bring the pride back. Okay? Hope for a different tomorrow. Make America great again. They're all stump speeches. Okay? What makes Trump different? His stump speech lasts about 2 hours, and it's never the same. Even though it's the same content. He just, whenever it comes to his mind, he starts talking about it. Okay, but you'll notice, if you guys have you ever watched Trump give one of those rally speeches? You don't have to watch the whole thing. Just in general, if you watched,
Talks about whatever's popular.
he'll just kind of off the
But
top
I
of his
think that
head
also
talk about
kind of
whatever.
engages the people too. So
Does he ever give you a vision of what he's going to do?
not really. He just kind of engages the people.
Yeah, there you go. And that's kind of what the point of this is Forbes is doing the same thing. He's just not very exciting about it. I'm going to talk about a flat tax. Now, look, you all are going to care about taxes someday. Okay? Some of you are already working, you have a job, and so you do kind of worry about, like, where's my money going? Your parents definitely, during April were worried about the tax rate and worried about doing their taxes and whatever else. Everybody worries about that, but nobody wants to hear a speech about taxation. Okay? Most crowds aren't going to be like, oh my God, Steve Forbes is coming to town, and he's going to talk about taxes today. Where do I get my tickets? Okay? It's a losing proposition to talk about that. Most people don't want to talk about that. They want to hear, I'm going to cut taxes, and then you move on to the next thing. You deserve to have more money in your pocket. Yeah, we do. Nobody ever says, how are you going to do it? Okay? It's a lot easier just to say, I'm going to cut taxes, or I'm going to put money back in your pockets. That's what I'm going to do, and then move on. Steve Forbes talked about, here's a flat tax, and here's what that means. Let me explain it to you. And why is that not popular to do as a candidate?
It's boring.
It's boring, doesn't engage the people, and you don't want to be lectured. Especially, look, folks, when you're your parents' age, when you're in your 40s, do you want to be lectured? You guys don't even want to be lectured now. The last thing you need is a candidate coming in. Let me explain to you what my taxes are all about. Let me explain to you how this is going to work. Because I know you're too dumb to understand it. So let me explain it in layman's terms so you get it. Nobody ever wants a candidate or anybody looking at them going, you're too dumb to get this. So let me go through it step by step. Even though we do complain that the presidential candidates never said anything specific. Okay. Then, of course, Phil Gramm, your favorite foot candidate. Yeah, Lewis takes great pains to tell that story. He loves feet. He's one of the first candidates that he talks about, too, in one of the earliest chapters. He talks about the meeting he has with a typical American family. And what happens with that typical American family?
They, like, after a while, they leave him.
They kind of think he's creepy.
They think he's creepy.
Like, he stares at his wife's chest a lot. Like, he also doesn't pay attention to people. Like, he can't pay attention to people. Kind of like he'll be smiling, like acting like he's listening to what you're saying, like kind of smiling, nodding, whatever. And then, as soon as you're done talking, he'll just like launch into something else, like just completely different. And then also, if you say something morbid, like he'll be smiling, and then like a second later, he'll catch what you said, and then like drop his emotions to like something different. Like,
Yeah, so he's not a good listener. And as a candidate, don't you have to be able to listen and actively engage with those people? It also doesn't help that he's looking like if you're married and the guy that's running for president is looking at your wife's chest
yeah,
all the way through it,
That's a little creepy.
not only is that creepy, it's offensive
I guess that's
because you're looking at my wife not as an equal, not as a political mind. You're looking at my wife as a sexual object, and that's not okay. Yeah.
also, the husband Matt, before that dinner, he like Graham sent some people over to talk to Matt about what he can and can't talk about, and he pleaded not to talk about Bosnia or anything that like Graham really wasn't talking about or didn't really care about, and only to talk about the federal budget. So that also was a huge part of Matt going to the other person's table. I can't remember who he went over to sit with, but um, he basically just completely ruined it by saying what he can and can't talk about.
And this is a staged meeting. So, to be fair, a lot of these political candidates do that. And it's good that you bring that up, actually. Uh, how many times have we seen candidates meet up with people? It's called a photo opportunity. It's a staged scene. And how quickly can those staged scenes go poorly? Okay. And this happens every once in a while. During Obama's time, he was at a crowd at a rally shaking hands with people, and a guy in Toledo, Ohio started yelling at him about the budget and about taxes and about working man's wages and inflation. And he earned the title Joe the Plumber. Okay. And he ended up being a fairly conservative guy and ended up being somebody that kind of was, politically motivated, and that's why he was there. But it does beg the question: you're shaking hands with the crowd. You're not expecting somebody to challenge you directly face to face. And Obama learned a lesson at that point that, hey, you can't just walk up to a crowd and assume everybody loves you, because somebody might have a legitimate question, and if you brush them off, if you just kind of go, that hurts you. And it didn't hurt him enough to where he lost the election by any stretch. And Joe the Plumber did. He was a guy from Toledo, Ohio. He ended up having a somewhat checkered political career after that, because he did run for Congress. Okay. But bottom line is, you do have to be on your toes as a candidate that, yeah, you're going to have photo opportunities, but they could go poorly. Okay. George H.W. Bush, Daddy Bush, had one of the worst photo ops in American history. He went to a grocery store while he was campaigning. And it was early in the campaign in 1992. He was running for re-election. He goes campaigning, and they have him go to a corner grocery store just to kind of show he's a man of the people. And he couldn't believe that they had this really newfangled piece of technology when he was there. He just couldn't get beyond the fact that they were going dink, dink, dink. And he was just like, what the? That's incredible. How long have you had those? And they're like, sir, like 20 years. He had never seen a cash register that had a scanner, because the last time he had gone grocery shopping was in the 1960s. He didn't go grocery shopping, so he had no idea. Kind of hard to be a man of the people if you've never seen a grocery scanner. Okay? Man of the people means that you know exactly what these things are. You're not surprised by things. You know what this stuff is. He looked out of touch. Okay, the photo op turned bad at that point and could be used by the opponent. And Bill Clinton, of course, ran with it, made fun of it. SNL made fun of it. A lot of things can happen to you if you're not really prepared. Sometimes interviews go poorly. Do you guys know who Sarah Palin is? You remember Sarah Palin? She's running for Congress this year from Alaska. She was John McCain's running mate back in 2008. Okay, she was the second female ever nominated for the vice presidency. The first time the Republicans had done it. She was interviewed by Katie Couric. Katie Couric was one of the lead news people for CBS. In the interview, she was just asking what many people consider to be simple questions, almost kind of softball questions. And one of the questions was, where do you turn to for your news? What do you read? Okay. Now, if I ask you, where do you turn to for your news, Steve? What do you read? You don't really read any news. Now, if you were running for the vice presidency, would that be an okay answer?
No.
But you're not running for the vice presidency, so it's okay. Okay. You're a sophomore in high school. You are correct. Okay. Felix, if I ask you, where do you turn to for your news? What do you read? Okay, so if it kind of comes up on your social media feed, I might click on it. Okay? Chapin, who do you turn to for your news?
Anything that's on my phone. Anything I see
Anything on your phone.
Exactly.
Will, who do you turn to for your news? Social media. So your generation probably would look at her answer as being okay, because her answer literally was, I don't know, all of them. And she was looking for, like, hey, do you read Newsweek? Do you read Time? Do you read the New York Times? Do you read the New Yorker? Do you read the Atlantic? Do you have a news organization that you turn to? Like, who do you look to for your information? And her answer was like, I don't know all of them. She was just kind of all over the place with the answer. And there were a lot of people sitting at home going, this woman can't even name one publication. Your generation may look at that and be like, that's fine. I don't really pay attention to what I read either. Okay? But for her, that was a very crippling answer back in 08. She's recovered okay. She's running for Congress, like I said. So, her political career was not done. But that was seen as a very damaging interview. SNL picked up on it. Tina Fey played her on SNL. And Tina Fey did the interview word for word. So when the campaign said, hey, you're being mean to Sarah Palin, they literally could say, we did it word for word. We didn't alter anything. We were literally making fun of her answers verbatim. Okay? So that way, if anybody said, hey, you're being mean to her, he used her own words. We didn't change a thing. The only thing they did change was the eye rolls of the person playing Katie Couric, who is Amy Poehler. Okay? So again, you got to be careful about these photo ops. And Phil Gramm certainly learned that. All right, you talked about Alan Keyes. Richard Lugar. That was probably the hardest slide you had to get through.
Yeah.
Why?
He didn't exist. Okay.
How many times? You probably even got to the notes and went, who the hell is Richard Lugar? Because Lewis kept forgetting he was in the race. Not a good way to run for president if everybody forgets you're there. Okay? He dropped out fairly early. Okay? And then Maury Taylor. Anybody? I was surprised you guys didn't say, oh, Maury Taylor was interesting.
He was. He just wasn't my favorite. Like, I like how he made fun of kids. And then went, straight into speaking about whatever he wanted to talk about. He was passionate, but at the same time, he kind of just I feel like he almost got a little too egotistical, like Keys did, but not as egotistical as Keys did. Like, I definitely feel like after parts of the book, Maury Taylor kind of got, he was acting like he knew he was going to be president and that he, 100% was going to be president, and Dole was nothing on him, and Clinton was nothing, but he kind of just focused on himself too much, I think.
Okay, Keyes and Taylor are the last two, really, legit candidates remaining, right? There is a sense in that okay, they know they're not going to win, but they got nothing to lose. So they're all in on, this is who I am and this is why I'm different than the guy you currently are voting for. So they're kind of the long shot candidates that are there to make a point. Okay, as Liam said earlier, Keyes was there to make the religious point, right? He was the guy that was anti-abortion. He was the anti-gay man. He was anti anything that was against the Bible in his mind. Okay, so he stuck around longer to make the point about religion being important.
Yeah.
What is Taylor sticking around for?
He's sticking around.
He's the businessman, Titan International, right? So he's sticking around to talk about the economy. Okay, because at the time the economy wasn't all that great. Okay, so it's on the upswing and he wants it to continue, of course, but they're coming out of a recession and he's trying to kind of point out, and this is what kind of derails Perot before Perot ever gets started, because everybody had already been hearing from Maury Taylor the stuff that Perot was going to come on and yell about. And Perot had kind of exhausted his appeal in 92, so 96 he wasn't as important. Okay, and of course you had Clinton and Perot. How much did Clinton come up in this book?
At the start, not a lot, but towards the end, he came up more. Yeah, so.
As we start transitioning, which that's the point that I want to make about the nomination process. They're so busy beating up each other for about a year. Then a lot of them start dropping out. And where do they turn their venom? Towards Clinton. Same thing will happen here in 2024. Okay? In 24, all the Republicans are going to come out of the woodwork to run for the presidency. Right now, it looks like Trump will probably run again. We don't know for sure. He hasn't declared officially, but he's given us all signs that he probably will. Okay. You guys know Ron DeSantis from Florida,
Yeah.
the governor of Florida? He's been putting pretty clear signs that he's probably going to run as well. Pretty sure that Ted Cruz is going to throw his name back into the ring. Okay. You know, there are a number of Republicans that are going to probably run again. Okay. And I would not be surprised to see an Ohioan. You know, DeWine's old, but so is, you know, Biden. So I think we've taken age off the table when it comes to the presidency right now. When the last two presidents we've elected have been the oldest we've ever elected. Okay. So right now, everybody in the Republican Party is kind of wondering, all right, who's up next? Who's the next person? Are we going back to Trump or are we finding a new person? Okay. So they're all looking at every Republican governor out there. They're looking at every Republican senator out there. They're looking at maybe some people from Congress, maybe some people who have retired and are coming back into the fray. I don't know if you guys remember or know the name Nikki Haley. She was the UN ambassador for the United States ambassador to the UN under Trump. She was previously the governor of South Carolina. She's kind of been in the news a lot recently. Mike Pompeo, the former, Trump cabinet secretary, he's been in the news a lot recently. You know, like these people are going on television news to kind of remind you, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still relevant. Hi. Don't forget about me, because they may be gearing up to run for the presidency. What's weird is right now you have an election where there's no guarantee Biden will run again. Biden may look at this and say, you know what, I'm too old. I'm too dang tired. I'm just not going to run again. And if that happens, what happens to the Democrats? What do they have to do? They're going to have to find candidates. You know, they're going to have to go to the.
But I don't think they're going to be bad. I think Bernie and everyone who
Bernie's pretty darn old too.
I think they'll still all want to run. I think he's really determined.
You're not sure exactly what everybody's intentions are, but these people are all in the. If you don't think that Kamala Harris has a small little committee off to the side, exploring the possibility that she'll replace her boss, you know, you're crazy. That's exactly what she's doing. She's positioning herself for a run. There's no reason to think that people who ran the last time, like Cory Booker and Pete Buttigieg, aren't positioning themselves as well. That, you know, if the moment calls, we're going to step into the ring. There's been grumblings that maybe Michelle Obama would want to run. Michelle, who has never been in politics other than being a first lady and doesn't seem too comfortable with the idea. But there have been people saying, well, if Trump gets the nomination for the Republicans, Michelle might be the only Democrat that could beat him. You know, so if you pay attention to a lot of politics right now, that's kind of what the general tenor is right now. Okay, with this. Now, the reason I wanted you to read this book is to realize that this nomination phase hasn't changed all that much. Still very heavy on money, still very heavy on influence, still very heavy on front runners. You know, that, you know, if we were to say right now, who's the front runner for the Republican nomination in 2024? Probably Trump, right? He's the name people know. He's the known commodity. Are there people that can beat him? Sure. Okay, there are. If Biden says, you know what, I'm not going to run for re-election, are there front runners within the Democratic Party? Are there people that the Democrats would immediately point to and say, hey, they're pretty good, we're going to run them? Sure. Are there other Democrats that we've never heard of that might step into the ring? Are there other Republicans we've never heard of who might step in the ring? Absolutely. Okay? So it does get a little crazy. And Lewis is trying to shine a light on how crazy this is. Because I think you would agree, not all these candidates were worth being president.
Also, I think probably more celebrities will also run nowadays too.
Are you hinting that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is going to step in there?
But because of pop culture now kind of being so.
And fair, because Trump has kind of opened that door, has he not?
Yeah,
You know?
but I think Trump hasn't done something new. This isn't Maury Taylor. Or Forbes was almost the exact same thing as Trump's almost.
Sure.
Like, kind of from his father's company, he was a son. He like kind of benefited off of that. But Forbes and Trump kind of have their differences, I would say, but it's kind of almost like a similar story. But
So you can see a connective tissue between those guys. You can see
Yeah.
how
I
Forbes
think-
and Taylor kind of morph into.
I honestly
Sure.
think that these guys right now kind of ran at the wrong time And there might be times where a guy like Clinton who can handle more problems at once and have more of a better public, like especially in the 90s with a whole bunch of the stuff going on in the 90s. But or times where it's kind of just more focused on what's wrong and just get it done and get over with quick,
Sure.
like how some of these Republicans are. And this is like one that Lewis or this campaign that Lewis covers.
But and you're right. Timing is everything, right? We got a boatload of problems, and we need a problem solver. We're going to go find the problem solver. We have a specific issue, and this is the only one talking about it. Doesn't matter who he is. We're going to put him in. You don't know what the times call for, and we've talked about this throughout the year. That was Hoover a bad guy? No. Was he well trained? Absolutely. He was ready to be president of the United States, but he wasn't ready for the Great Depression. He didn't have the skill set for the Great Depression. He did not have the ability to look at the American people and say, I feel it, I get it, I understand. He didn't have the empathy, if you will, or the skills to get on the radio and comfort people. FDR did. Now, did FDR have great programs? It's debatable. It's absolutely debatable about the New Deal, and how effective it really was. Okay, but what he did have was that soft skill of getting on the radio and saying, I understand, I feel it, and I'm working on it. And it was assuring to people. Even the dumbest phrase, I told you, the dumbest phrase ever, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And yet people were like, he gets it. He gets it. So, all right, here's the deal. Your assignment, okay, because this is the part that I think many of you are just kind of waiting for, like, all right, what is he going to make us do next? That's where Liam starts to cry. All right, Liam, stick with me here. Your assignment. We're going back to 5th grade. Okay, right now Olivia's like, yay, 5th grade. Chicago's going to be happy with this one. And we're going to use markers. Yay, markers. I want a poster. Poster. 20 by 28. Kind of stuff you get at the dollar store for 79 cents. Tell me how that makes sense. Okay? If you want the colored ones, you can get 2 for $1 if you just want white. Doesn't matter. Poster board. If you need poster board, I can find you poster board. Okay? Just let me know. All right? I want a poster. Split into 3. Okay? You can do a trifold if you want. Okay? I want a comparison to 3 of these candidates. Any of the candidates from your notes. Okay? So I'm going to grade your notes today and get them back to you so you have them, on Google ready to go. You're going to pick 3 candidates from this reading. Okay? Who's their modern day equivalent? Who can you say you kind of already started thinking that way, saying I can see how this candidate morphs into this candidate, and they don't have to be Republicans. Okay, they don't have to be. They don't even have to be Democrats. They could be some random person that just kind of ran for president. They don't actually have to have run for president yet. I'm looking for politicians that you can say, you know what, I see what happened in 96 is still going on today in these candidates. Okay? You're going to do a little bit of research, and you're going to show me on the poster how this person links to this person. So tell me a little story, or tell me about the viewpoints, or tell me about their political platform in 96, and link it to somebody today with the same type of stuff, where you can draw a direct line. Okay? Does this make sense to everybody so far?
Yeah.
Okay, those links should be about 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, I'm not asking for a huge, long essay here. I'm asking for you to show me this candidate is like this person. Okay, so for example, one of these people is like Nancy Pelosi. One of these people is like AOC. One of these people is like, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And if you don't know who those people are, that's okay. I'm asking, the biggest part of this is your research. Now, what I'm going to do for you guys over this weekend is I'm going to type up a list of people, current relevant politicians. You may or may not have heard of these people at all. but I'm going to at least make a list of these people, and I'm going to give you a link to. Has anybody ever used a website called Ballotpedia? Okay, Ballotpedia it's like, I think Wikipedia, but just politics. If they've appeared on a ballot, doesn't matter how big or small, they're on Ballotpedia somewhere. Okay? So this organization specifically does research for your elections. So I'm going to give you the list of names to look up. And again, Ballotpedia is a great place to start because not only are they going to give you where they're from and kind of give you some background, they're going to tell you what their political viewpoints are, which are going to help you. Okay? I would like it to be visual. If you need me to print pictures for you, you need to send them, like put them into a Google Doc and share it with me. Here are the 6 pictures I need because I need 3 of these guys and 3 modern. Okay, you just send them to me on Google Docs and I'll print them off in color if you get them to me early enough. Okay, that way I can hand them to you in a folder. You can cut them out, put them on your poster. Now your poster is due next Friday. Okay, I have to have these done so I can submit your grades for Sinclair. Okay, so again, I'm asking you visual, show me the link, both in your written word, okay, and on the poster visually that these people are linked. You're getting graded on how well you do your research here, how well you make your argument. Okay, the minimum is 2 to 3 sentences. You can write a book if you want. Okay, if you feel like this one's out there, so I'm going to have to explain this a little bit more. Feel free to do so. Okay, is everybody clear on what the expectation is? All right. I would strongly advise you, if you want your pictures for the poster in a timely manner, that you should probably have them to me by Wednesday. Share them with me so I can print them. Give them to you Thursday so you can take them home and paste them on and bring them in on Friday. I don't want to see cutting and pasting on Friday. I want to see you walk in and say, here's my poster at 8 o'clock, which is oddly not a problem for the CCP, folks. Congratulations. You all have an alarm clock. Except for Landon, but he's the outlier. All right.